Where's everybody? There's nobody here. Heard from a couple people. Nicole, Rylan. Where's Frederick?
He's got
Slackers.
I think you got a couple more coming.
I was thinking about bringing y'all barbecue, but not if nobody comes to class or shows up on time. Just hang on to it. Like I'm at the end. You're missing a lot of people. Why is nobody here? Something going on? No, just we're done. Okay, well today's for you guys then. So we're gonna watch something. It's about 18 minutes, so it's a few minutes long. I would encourage you, and then we're gonna talk about it related to class. Okay, so I would encourage you to take notes if you would like, to make comments about things that stood out to you, or questions you might have, or things you want to discuss, and then we'll get into a lesson. Sound good?
Face the news each morning with trepidation and dread. Every day we read of shootings, inequality, pollution, dictatorship, war, and the spread of nuclear weapons. These are some of the reasons that 2016 was called the worst year ever. Until 2017 claimed that record, and left many people longing for earlier decades when the world seemed safer, cleaner, and more equal. But is this a sensible way to understand the human condition in the 21st century? As Franklin Pierce Adams pointed out, nothing is more responsible for the good old days than a bad memory. You can always fool yourself into seeing a decline if you compare leading headlines of the present with rose-tinted images of the past. What does the trajectory of the world look like when we measure well-being over time using a constant yardstick? Let's compare the most recent data on the present with the same measures 30 years ago. Last year, Americans killed each other at a rate of 5.3 per 100,000, had 7% of their citizens in poverty, and emitted 21 million tons of particulate matter and 4 million tons of sulfur dioxide. But 30 years ago, the homicide rate was 8.5 per 100,000, poverty rate was 12%, and we emitted 35 million tons of particulate matter and 20 million tons of sulfur dioxide. What about the world as a whole? Last year, the world had 12 ongoing wars, 60 autocracies, 10% of the world population in extreme poverty, and more than 10,000 nuclear weapons. But 30 years ago, there were 23 wars, 85 autocracies, 37% of the world population in extreme poverty, and more than 60,000 nuclear weapons. True, last year was a terrible year for terrorism in Western Europe with 238 deaths, but 1988 was worse with 440 deaths. What's going on? Was 1988 a particularly bad year? Or are these improvements a sign that the world, for all its struggles, gets better over time? Might we even invoke the admittedly old-fashioned notion of progress? To do so is to court a certain amount of derision, because I have found that intellectuals hate progress. And intellectuals who call themselves progressive really hate progress. Now, it's not that they hate the fruits of progress, mind you. Most academics and pundits would rather have their surgery with anesthesia than without it. It's the idea of progress that rankles the chattering class. If you believe that humans can improve their lot, I have been told, that means that you have a blind faith and a quasi-religious belief in the outmoded superstition and the false promise of the myth of the onward march of inexorable progress. You are a cheerleader for vulgar American can-doism, with the rah-rah spirit of boardroom ideology, Silicon Valley, and the Chamber of Commerce. You are a practitioner of Whig history, a naive optimist, a Pollyanna, and of course a Pangloss, alluding to the Voltaire character who declared all is for the best in the best of all possible worlds. Well, Professor Pangloss, as it happens, was a pessimist. A true optimist believes there could be much better worlds than the one we have today. But all of this is irrelevant because the question of whether progress has taken place is not a matter of faith or having an optimistic temperament or seeing the glass as half full. It's a testable hypothesis. For all their differences, people largely agree on what goes into human well-being. Life, health, sustenance, prosperity, peace, freedom, safety, knowledge, leisure, happiness. All of these things can be measured. If they have improved over time, that, I submit, is progress. Let's go to the data. Beginning with the most precious thing of all, life. For most of human history, life expectancy at birth was around 30. Today, worldwide, it is more than 70, and in the developed parts of the world, more than 80. 250 years ago, in the richest countries of the world, a third of the children did not live to see their 5th birthday. Before the risk was brought down 100-fold, today that fate befalls less than 6% of children in the poorest countries of the world. Famine is one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse and could bring devastation to any part of the world. Today, famine has been banished to the most remote and war-ravaged regions. 200 years ago, 90% of the world's population subsisted in extreme poverty. Today, fewer than 10% of people do. For most of human history, the powerful states and empires were pretty much always at war with each other, and peace was a mere interlude between wars. Today, they are never at war with each other. The last great power war pitted the United States against China 65 years ago. More recently, wars of all kinds have become fewer and less deadly. The annual rate of war has fallen from about 22 per 100,000 per year in the early 50s to 1.2 today. Democracy has suffered obvious setbacks in Venezuela, in Russia, in Turkey, and is threatened by the rise of authoritarian populism in Eastern Europe and the United States. Yet the world has never been more democratic than it has been in the past decade, with 2/3 of the world's people living in democracies. Homicide rates plunge whenever anarchy and the code of vendetta are replaced by the rule of law. It happened when feudal Europe was brought under the control of centralized kingdoms, so that today a Western European has 1/35 the chance of being murdered compared to his medieval ancestors. It happened again in colonial New England, in the American Wild West when the sheriffs moved to town, and in Mexico. Indeed, we've become safer in just about every way. Over the last century, we've become 96% less likely to be killed in a car crash, 88% less likely to be mowed down on the sidewalk, 99% less likely to die in a plane crash, 95% less likely to be killed on the job, 89% less likely to be killed by an act of God, such as a drought, flood, wildfire, storm, volcano, landslide, earthquake, or meteor strike, presumably not because God has become less angry with us, but because of improvements in the resilience of our infrastructure. And what about the quintessential act of God, the projectile hurled by Zeus himself? Yes, we are 97% less likely to be killed by a bolt of lightning. Before the 17th century, no more than 15% of Europeans could read or write. Europe and the United States achieved universal literacy by the middle of the 20th century, and the rest of the world is catching up. Today, more than 90% of the world's population under the age of 25 can read and write. In the 19th century, Westerners worked more than 60 hours per week. Today, they work fewer than 40. Thanks to the universal penetration of running water and electricity in the developed world, and the widespread adoption of washing machines, vacuum cleaners, refrigerators, dishwashers, stoves, and microwaves, the amount of our lives that we forfeit to housework has fallen from 60 hours a week to fewer than 15 hours a week. Do all these gains in health, wealth, safety, knowledge, and leisure make us any happier? The answer is yes. In 86% of the world's countries, happiness has increased in recent decades. Well, I hope to have convinced you that progress is not a matter of faith or optimism, but is a fact of human history. Indeed, the greatest fact in human history. And how has this fact been covered in the news? A tabulation of positive and negative emotion words in news stories has shown that during the decades in which humanity has gotten healthier, wealthier, wiser, safer, and happier, the New York Times has become increasingly morose, and the world's broadcasts, too, have gotten steadily glummer. Why don't people appreciate progress? Part of the answer comes from our cognitive psychology. We estimate risk using a mental shortcut called the availability heuristic. The easier it is to recall something from memory, the more probable we judge it to be. The other part of the answer comes from the nature of journalism, captured in this satirical headline from The Onion: CNN holds morning meeting to decide what viewers should panic about for the rest of the day. News is about stuff that happens, not stuff that doesn't happen. You never see a journalist who says, "I'm reporting live from a country that has been at peace for 40 years, or a city that has not been attacked by terrorists." Also, bad things can happen quickly, but good things aren't built in a day. The papers could have run the headline, 137,000 people escaped from extreme poverty yesterday, every day for the last 25 years. That's 1.25 billion people leaving poverty behind, but you never read about it. Also, the news capitalizes on our morbid interest in what can go wrong, captured in the programming policy: if it bleeds, it leads. Well, if you combine our cognitive biases with the nature of news, you can see why the world has been coming to an end for a very long time indeed. Let me address some questions about progress that no doubt have occurred to many of you. First, isn't it good to be pessimistic, to safeguard against complacency, to rake the muck, to speak truth to power? Well, not exactly. It's good to be accurate. Of course, we should be aware of suffering and danger wherever they occur, but we should also be aware of how they can be reduced, because there are dangers to indiscriminate pessimism. One of them is fatalism. If all our efforts at improving the world have been in vain, why throw good money after bad? The poor will always be with you. And since the world will end soon, if climate change doesn't kill us all, then runaway artificial intelligence will, a natural response is to enjoy life while we can. Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. The other danger of thoughtless pessimism is radicalism. If our institutions are all failing and beyond hope for reform, a natural response is to seek to smash the machine, drain the swamp, burn the empire to the ground, on the hope that whatever rises out of the ashes is bound to be better than what we have now. Well, if there is such a thing as progress, what causes it? Progress is not some mystical force or dialectic lifting us ever higher. It's not a mysterious arc of history bending toward justice. It's the result of human efforts governed by an idea that we associate with the 18th century Enlightenment, namely that if we apply reason and science to enhance human well-being, we can gradually succeed. Is progress inevitable? Of course not. Progress does not mean that everything becomes better for everyone, everywhere, all the time. That would be a miracle. And progress is not a miracle, but problem solving. Problems are inevitable, and solutions create new problems which have to be solved in their turn. The unsolved problems facing the world today are gargantuan, including the risks of climate change and nuclear war. But we must see them as problems to be solved, not apocalypses in waiting, and aggressively pursue solutions like deep decarbonization for climate change and global zero for nuclear war. Finally, does the Enlightenment go against human nature? This is an acute question for me, because I'm a prominent advocate of the existence of human nature with all its shortcomings and perversities. In my book, The Blank Slate, I argued that the human prospect is more tragic than utopian, and that we are not stardust, we are not golden, and there's no way we're getting back to the garden. But my worldview has lightened up in the 15 years since the Blank Slate was published. My acquaintance with the statistics of human progress, starting with violence, but now encompassing every other aspect of our well-being, has fortified my belief that in understanding our tribulations and woes, human nature is the problem, but human nature, channeled by Enlightenment norms and institutions, is also the solution. Admittedly, it's not easy to replicate my own data-driven epiphany with humanity at large. Some intellectuals have responded with fury to my book Enlightenment Now, saying, first, how dare he claim that intellectuals hate progress? And second, how dare he claim that there has been progress? With others, the idea of progress just leaves them cold. Saving the lives of billions, eradicating disease, feeding the hungry, teaching kids to read, boring. At the same time, the most common response I've received from readers is gratitude. Gratitude for changing their view of the world from a numb and helpless fatalism to something more constructive, even heroic. I believe that the ideals of the Enlightenment can be cast as a stirring narrative, and I hope that people with greater artistic flair and rhetorical power than I can tell it better and spread it further. It goes something like this. We are born into a pitiless universe, facing steep odds against life-enabling order and in constant jeopardy of falling apart. We were shaped by a process that is ruthlessly competitive. We are made from crooked timber, vulnerable to illusions, self-centeredness, and at times astounding stupidity. Yet, human nature has also been blessed with resources that open a space for a kind of redemption. We are endowed with the power to combine ideas recursively, have thoughts about our thoughts. We have an instinct for language, allowing us to share the fruits of our ingenuity and experience. We are deepened with a capacity for sympathy, for pity, imagination, compassion, commiseration. These endowments have found ways to magnify their own power. The scope of language has been augmented by the written, printed, and electronic word. Our circle of sympathy has been expanded by history, journalism, and the narrative arts. And our puny rational faculties have been multiplied by the norms and institutions of reason, intellectual curiosity, open debate, skepticism of authority and dogma, and the burden of proof to verify ideas by confronting them against reality. As the spiral of recursive improvement gathers momentum, we eke out victories against the forces that grind us down, not least the darker parts of our own nature. We penetrate the mysteries of the cosmos, including life and mind. We live longer, suffer less, learn more, get smarter, and enjoy more small pleasures and rich experiences. Fewer of us are killed, assaulted, enslaved, exploited, or oppressed by the others. From a few oases, the territories with peace and prosperity are growing and could someday encompass the globe. Much suffering remains, and tremendous peril, but ideas on how to reduce them have been voiced, and an infinite number of others are yet to be conceived. We will never have a perfect world, and it would be dangerous to seek one. But there's no limit to the betterments we can attain if we continue to apply knowledge to enhance human flourishing. This heroic story is not just another myth. Myths are fictions, but this one is true. True to the best of our knowledge, which is the only truth we can have. As we learn more, we can show which parts of the story continue to be true and which ones false, as any of them might be, and any could become. And this story belongs not to any tribe, but to all of humanity, to any sentient creature with the power of reason and the urge to persist in its being. For it requires only the convictions that life is better than death, health is better than sickness, abundance is better than want, freedom is better than coercion, happiness is better than suffering, and knowledge is better than ignorance and superstition. Thank you.
Thoughts? Aside from glorious hair. at a time.
That man needs to tell us stuff to politicians.
Huh?
He needs to tell us politicians
Why?
because they seem to have a very nihilistic view of what's going on there.
How many politicians? All of them?
Yes, just in front of Congress
Okay, why do you think that?
because it subverts what I think a lot of people think these days about reality.
So, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, say the current kind of climate is you're either a crazy liberal or a racist conservative, and everybody's being horrible to each other and oppressing each other and committing genocide and all this crazy stuff.
But is that what's happening?
No, according to that we've gotten a lot better, and not focusing on that seems detrimental.
Right. So, what is actually happening in D.C. then? Is it actually that way? Is there genocide happening in this country?
No.
So why would you think that?
Because I think it serves the interests of specific people
Who?
in power.
Who?
Well, politicians.
Does that serve the politicians well?
Yes.
It's an election in 7 months.
Yes.
Why not, Blake?
I mean, it creates a situation where everybody's in such a horrible place that they just are pissed about everything.
Uh-huh.
Like, I'm a political science major, and I interact with so many different people that have completely opposite views from me.
Mm-hmm.
And like when you first get into it, there's some people that are into it because it's, oh, I want to do this and this and this. But in reality, a lot of us in the upper level classes get along pretty well, and we actually agree pretty well on a lot of stuff, even though at first we don't realize we do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's a lot of what actually happens in DC,
Mhm.
because of the news and a
Bingo,
lot of that
Zach,
going
that's where I
on.
was going.
No.
It's how it's presented. Does everyone in D.C. hate each other and attack each other with knives?
No.
No. Do they all get along all the time? No. But is progress still being made?
Yes.
Yes. But it's how it's presented is what you're seeing, which is what he's talking about with the news. Connor.
I think that video shows the importance of being able to be mature enough to see multiple perspectives on things.
Mm-hmm.
I always think to our core discipline brief.
Say it to what?
To our core discipline brief.
Uh-huh.
We look at the numbers and we're like, all right, we only had 2 SASH cases this year. We're like, is that something to celebrate? Even though it went down from what?
What does that mean? What happened?
Sexual assault.
Oh, okay.
We're like, even though it went down, we should be able to see both perspectives. Yes, it's too many.
Uh-huh. But
But
progress
also,
made.
we went down from blank number.
Okay.
So it's the ability to look at multiple different perspectives of like, hey, yeah, we are getting better at all of these things,
Mhm.
but we also need to get a lot better in these actions as well. So
Okay.
I think on like a religious note, I think that's one beautiful thing that like God's gonna do, right? There's a lot of bad things in the world, so you're like, oh, we got a perfect God that creates bad things.
Mhm.
Well, let's look at the bigger perspective as well, and we have multiple different viewpoints on like how you're able to look at some scenarios with like a microscope. Hey, this is bad, but also look at the big picture and see how things can improve as well.
In your worldview papers, I asked you, is the world a peaceful place or a troubled place? Tally. You want to know? Any guesses? How we did? And the people in this room alone? Most what? Both? Yeah, it's definitely both. Okay. It's close, but it's fairly split. It definitely leans one way more than the other. Which way does it lean?
I'd say peaceful.
Troubled. 16 to 11. Brendel didn't answer the question.
I did it again.
Oh, did you at the end?
That's the trouble.
Okay, well, I went through and I was only looking at that point. Okay, we'll see. We'll see. Okay, I'll go back. I didn't grade them yet, but I wanted to tabulate what you guys said. 16 of you said trouble. Okay, and a lot of you mentioned faith, right? Which is a good thing. Not alone in that, right? No matter where you stand on faith, it was mentioned a lot, right? Of the 11 that said it's more peaceful, you guys are indecisive punks. It's both. It depends. Han even wrote it. Dr. Payne will not like my answer.
Yes, I said
Okay? Now, you're not wrong. Okay? You're not wrong. And you justified your answers, which is fine. But some of you, okay, were like, it's awful. Right? It's a terrible place. What did that make you think, Angel? What did you think of that video?
I would say yeah, it's getting better, but it's still bad. Like,
Why? What is so bad?
I think it's perception, the way the media perceives it. People are
Correct.
Yeah, like people crave. Oh, I read something that said Christmas Eve is better than Christmas because it's the anticipation of what we're gonna get versus what we actually get. The media, it's the anticipation of what's gonna happen versus what actually happens. And so everyone's like so wound up about everything. It's like, what could happen next? Like, is it gonna be really bad or is it gonna be really good? And then once it actually happens, things start to die down because we've accepted it.
So is it that bad?
I would say
Why?
because it's still bad.
But it's not. Right? It's so much better than it used to be. Okay? 120 years ago, right? If you break, maybe 150, you're getting pretty good. If you broke your leg 150 years ago, were you screwed? Screwed! Okay? It's just messed up the rest of your days. You may never walk again, it doesn't work, it doesn't heal right. You're just the guy with the wonky leg, okay, for the rest of your day. Are we good now? Is it better? Can we read? Do we have food? Even COVID, Russia, Ukraine. Admitted challenges that we're dealing with, right? Is it better? Look at the plague and how that went. Only time the world population has declined was during the plague, okay? Even the flu from 100 years ago. We recovered so much faster with COVID. Okay? We learn and we recover so much quicker, right? And not only that, it was who was impacted. Okay? If you were less healthy, it was more dangerous. Right? I have friends that are older, right, went out of their way to lose weight because they realized that COVID was preying on people who had other health conditions, right? Which is a wonderful thing, right? Yes, sir.
I think it was two different questions. Like, is it better?
Is it peaceful or troubled? It was not.
Well, you're saying like, hey, is the world a good place? We're like, no, but is it better? We're like, well, just because it's better doesn't mean it's good.
Okay, I'll take that, but the world as a whole is mostly peaceful. It is mostly good. We're mostly out of poverty. Almost everyone can read and write. Right? We've left poverty behind. Okay? For much of the world. There's some.
Kind of off that, and Connor, there's always going to be bad people in the world. Like, you're not going to stop someone doing something bad, and it's, up to other people to really kind of like not glorify them or not really like give them all the glorification of like what they did. 'Cause for some people, that's all they want. So, and that's what the media does.
Correct. Yeah, correct. I would agree. Right?
I mean, I think we can say that, like, there's a difference between are we better or are we good, but how can you possibly look at those stats and look at the average of all of human history and then look at what we've done in the last 30, 40, 50 years and say that's not good? Like, that is good, even if it's not perfect. Nobody said it's perfect, but that is absolutely good.
So you're saying the progress in the last 50 years is good? I'm
saying the progress overall has gotten us to a place that we are well above the average of human history in almost every measure, and therefore we are good, even if it's not perfect. It's good.
Yeah, which again, a lot of you were saying it was troubled. That's you're acknowledging the problems and the issues, okay, and that's fair. But it's the perception of how we look at it, and the perception of the data that's thrown at us, because a lot of it's not data, right? A lot of it is anecdotal. And I don't know the numbers, okay, but Russia, Ukraine, the death toll there, it seems incredibly low to me for what's happening, and it's a lot, and it's bad. But given the size of the two countries at war, to me it should be devastatingly worse than it's been. Right? It is significantly better than wars that have happened in the past between a giant and a smaller country. Right? Because of how we respond and the ways we go about doing things. And other countries who previously wouldn't have got involved are helping, no matter what it is. It is significantly better than it was. Connor?
Why do you think it's all right, you're probably not going to answer it, but why do you think it's important to celebrate a good world?
Why do I think it's important? Because of how we're wired, right? So a lot of you talked about, okay, if man, some of you in particular, if man is inherently sinful, right? I don't know that that's true. Man is capable of sin, but I would argue that the majority of people are good, right? Even people who aren't perfect, who aren't good, or who do bad things, right, are still gonna help somebody at some point, all right, or make the right decision to do better, or change from maybe how they were taught, right? Okay, so if you grew up in a household 100 years ago and your family members were KKK and they wanted to bring the kids along, and then the kids were like, wait a minute, don't think this is a good idea, okay? Because I served in World War II with some people from different color than me, different parts of the country, found them to be great, and I respect them. I've seen it play out in the military, okay, with enlisted personnel from backwoods redneck to white guy to inner city black guy thrown together, not liking each other at all, like going in with a bias, but didn't know each other, get to know each other, become friends. Still may not like those groups of people, but on an individual basis, totally get along. So I think we don't celebrate the good. Think about a time, you ever do something stupid in high school? You ever do some dumb shit? No. Never? Nice, Bauer. Good job, chaplain. Okay? Right? Never sin. Okay, good job. Okay. But you can think of that stupid thing, right? You ever lay awake 3 in the morning and be like, God, I can't believe I said that. Right? No, you just can't have a running list. Okay. Right? Can you ever think about times where you did something right or good?
Yeah.
Does it take longer?
Yeah. Takes more effort.
Why?
Focus on bad things.
Exactly. Why? Now, they can help you from repeating mistakes. Okay? I can't believe I said it. She's gone, bro. She ain't coming back. She don't want to talk to you anymore. Okay? It's 8th grade. Move on. Okay? So you can find her on Facebook. Huh? Yes, again, it can help you from repeating mistakes, but it can also cause you to undermine the positives. Don't discount or negate the things that you did well or excelled at, because we all have those. Okay? There are always good things that you've done that you can go back and look at and draw from. Lenny.
Going off that whole perception, how you said we tend to remember and focus on the negative more than the positive. Isn't there a name for that type of bias?
Yeah, there is. When I run through all the biases, which is like 35 of them that I've done before, yeah.
And I think it's also interesting how the speaker in the video mentioned when we always think the past was better than the future. Than
Yes.
the present.
Yeah.
There's, it's like how we look with hindsight, we look through it with rose-colored glasses.
Correct.
Like you used the example fish year, during fish year it seemed like it sucked, but now that we're not in it.
Oh, it's the best, wasn't it?
Yeah, we have good memories.
Yeah. No, you hated it. Okay? And then you made it. And you're like, oh, I'm great now. Okay. Right? Yeah, I would agree. When we were talking about moments in history, Mike brought up wanting to go back and serve in World War II. And all I could think of was the fact that we lost 290,000 Americans. So I'm like, I get where he's coming from, greatest generation, but the loss we suffered in this country and the world suffered was devastating. Your odds weren't good, right, of making out of there, right? So I get it. And you're absolutely right, it's how we look at history, okay? And when we see all those, which is why we talk about all these examples, when you see the thing of oh, I would have done the right thing, probably not. The statistics say that you wouldn't have, right? That you would have gone along with everyone else, that you would have pulled the trigger, that you would have made poor decisions, that you would not have, gone against the stream, swam against the stream. That's the hard thing to recognize. What else? What else you get out of it? Notice anything he said? What he talked about?
I like that he mentioned the negatives or what's dangerous about pessimism.
Uh-huh.
And that if we don't recognize our accomplishments and celebrate our accomplishments, then we resort to extremism and radicalism in order to get that perceived, progress that we don't see.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Good. Huh?
I think that this is relatable on the way that, let's say, your parents see that you get a bad grade and then they be super angry, but for all the times that you've been doing well and okay, they don't do anything special about it.
My 13-year-old was so mad at us the other day because she did poorly on a test. And she's like, well, what about all the other ones I did so well on? I said, yeah, you did a good job, but we're trying to figure out why you did poorly on the test. Well, my other friends did worse. I don't give a shit about that. Okay? And so she's so fixated. Her argument, okay, when she wants to argue, which is often, because actually she turned 14 yesterday. Okay, when she wants to argue, she will glom onto the one fact that she thinks she has to counter the argument and just say it over and over. Right? You didn't. What about the other times I did well? Yes, that's good, and we have acknowledged you. But this is the outlier. Why did you do poorly? We want to figure out what the problem is. Okay. Yeah. Good. What else?
I tend to relate stuff back to sports most of the time.
Uh-huh.
This kind of made me think of Nick Saban because in the past, like he's just been like a hothead constantly, just like blowing up on everybody. But like I've noticed the past, like I'd say 2 to 3 years, he tends to be a lot more. I don't know the word, maybe appreciative of the work that his players and coaches have done. And I don't know, like, because there's been like some national championships where like he gets up there after winning it and he's like, well, I don't know, like you got to prepare for tomorrow, and it's like, dude, like you just won the natty, like chill
Right.
out.
Yeah.
And then this past year, like they lost it, and then like in the interview, he like defended his players. He was like, hey, by the way, these 2 guys like did a great job for me this year. You know, they busted their ass, like show them some respect type thing.
I've showed it in other classes, but there's a great 60 Minutes piece. It's actually a few years old now, when he only had like 6 championships. Okay, where he talks about how he learned to coach differently, right? From having to learn how to evolve. Yeah, absolutely.
I just thought of that he's kind of changed his stance to maybe a little bit more appreciative of the good
Yeah, and
versus blowing up on the bad.
yes.
Asian was grand. I was seeing you on TV.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, like seeing how you act, because most people don't want to watch you. I've done this to my kiddo before too. When she's like whining or throwing a fit or just being terrible, you just film them. I'll just film her, all right, and then later I will show it to her.
Oh
Like,
my God.
look at how you were acting, which can be done for any of us. Okay, I'm not perfect. Okay, I have a temper. All right, I will get upset. All right, it applies to any of us. But if you ever go back and actually look at yourself like that, you're like, what an asshole I was. Right? It's pretty fascinating when we have those moments. But learn from them. And don't throw them away. What else? Yes, sir.
So like apply this to like a business setting.
Mm-hmm.
To apply that, is this like, hey, we need to be appreciative of our people's good work
Mm-hmm.
rather than just focusing on the bad? 'Cause obviously you need to focus on the bad to get better, but just also recognize the flip side of that and appreciate the good.
Yeah. What's the 2 things people want most in the world?
Money and power. Land and guns.
Praise and recognition. Right. I've got sex and money. It was good. But the question, it's actually in Triple Crown Leadership. What do people want more than sex and money? One of my favorite answers is more sex and more money, but it's praise and recognition. It's just did you ever, and I think I've asked this before, but did you ever have somebody come along, maybe this year or at some point where you were struggling, and just tell you, hey man, good job, or you're doing all right, just hang in it? Did that ever happen? What did that mean to you, Riley?
Oh, it meant the world.
The
I got shot
world.
every single day.
Yes, okay. Just when I went through survival training for the Air Force, which is, it's like this year. It's really fun once it's over, okay? It's the only time in the Air Force they're allowed to put their hands on you, okay? So we got in the woods, and these kids I had a kid from Florida, played every video game ever. I don't know how he made it through basic training, never seen a mountain, okay? And we're in the mountains, and I'm like dragging him along, right? And I come up and I check on him the other day. I'm like, dude, how you doing? He's like, you're the first sergeant that's ever been nice to me. I'm like, well, you just went through basic training. They're not very nice to you. But it was just the act of being like, dude, hang in there. You'll be okay, right? And what I learned was the dude had a terrible childhood, right? Military was a way for him to get out and get on his own, right? So not a great upbringing, but just checking in, be like, dude, are you okay? You're gonna be all right. Hang in there. All the difference in the world. Dr. Keller went to the Air Force Academy. You guys didn't know this. He played football there. Okay. Freshman year, which sucks, okay? No music, right? Limited things you can do and everything. And they were cleaning their rooms, and the seniors left their doors open. You have to have your doors open if you're in your dorm room. But the seniors, I guess, could close them. And they left their doors open and were playing music. And Dr. Keller was like, that is the nicest thing anyone has ever done for me in my life. just because it made it suck a little bit less. Like he's like, I remember thinking that. Those are the nicest seniors in the world. It doesn't take much. So yeah, we need to celebrate the good things, right? And you correct the problems, and we deal with mistakes, but rarely do we celebrate the good things. Rarely do we celebrate what people did well. What else you get out of it?
I thought it was pretty interesting about the amount of time people spend on, like in their life on house chores.
Yeah.
16 out of 15, and I absolutely hate house chores.
I'm so glad you brought this up. I forgot to bring this up. The only good life advice, right? I failed to bring this up when I was letting you guys ask questions. As soon as you can afford it, when you can afford it, don't do it beforehand, and you're married, hire someone to clean your house. Single best thing for your marriage you can possibly do. Okay? Make sure you can afford it. Have someone clean your house. It will save a huge number of not just time, but arguments and stupid shit that you shouldn't waste your time. Okay? When you can afford it, hire someone to clean your house for you. Okay? It depends. You got to find it, right? You can spend a lot. You can spend a lot of money. That's what I'm saying. Do it when you can afford it.
What about Roomba?
Yeah, exactly. We have one of those too. Still, not enough. Not enough. And then your stupid cats turn on the Roomba at 3 in the morning. Okay. It varies on the size of your place and who you hire and all that good stuff. Just make sure you can afford it. Don't do it if you can't afford it. You can clean. You can get by. But single best thing you can do for your marriage. Okay. What else do we get out of there? But consider that, the advances in technology. Travel. To get across the country. Right? It's 5 or 6 hours. You watch an Adam Sandler movie and fall asleep for a while and you're there. Okay? What you got?
That progress isn't guaranteed. That you have to make a conscientious effort for progress to occur.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Every organization in the world, okay, your church group, the company you work for, Texas A&M University, every organization in the world will gravitate towards mediocrity unless you actively pursue against that.
I quoted that.
You're welcome. Yeah. What else? What else do we get out of anything you said? Yes, sir.
One thing that, or I guess a couple things that really surprised me were the airplane and the lightning deaths. For some reason.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I did not expect there to be any change in who got killed by lightning.
Lightning rod.
I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah. So I mean,
thought about
just
it, but-
just general infrastructure, right? Having more secure places to live and all that good stuff.
I
Yeah.
know,
And then the safety mechanisms within aviation as well. Yeah.
I bet it's because of the cell towers. Like, if you have really tall cell towers all the time, those are going to catch the lightning instead of.
Could be. Could be. What else?
What about his book now?
Yeah, he's written several, and he's a really interesting dude if you get into it. I don't know that he was nihilistic necessarily, but very much like what led to this and him was realizing that he was wrong about his worldview. Like he literally had to come to grips with how he saw the world. Right? And the media is the hard one, right? Because it's you and your interaction with the media. How you see it, how you view it, what you take in, right? That's up to you. Right? So if they're telling you that things are terrible, all right, it's your perspective that whether they are or not. Right? And you need to find out, are they that bad? Are things in DC really that terrible? Yeah, they're a mess, but there's a shitload of people that are trying to do the right thing, right? We have different perspectives of what we think is right, but they're trying to get there. And it's hard when you disagree. Some of you guys even wrote about it, right? The fact that Kenneth's jaws dropped open when I said my wife and I are different political parties, right? Super common, okay? It's 100% okay. We can get along with people that think differently than us, right? Okay? It can happen. And look, there's 2 main reasons I showed you this. One, because some of you think it's the end of the world, and it's not, okay? It's really not. Yeah, shit like COVID happens. The war that's going on right now happens. The next time, it's up to you guys. You're the future problem solvers. You're our future politicians. God help me, okay? Our future officers, our future leaders, our future engineers, right? It's up to you guys. 2, where you are in the semester right now. Who is tired, stressed out, doesn't want to be here, doesn't want to wear the uniform? I'll stop going. That's everyone, okay? Mason's good, okay? Please hang in there. All right, it's not that bad. All right, you're almost done. Speaking of, the etiquette dinner that I think we'll do for this ceremony, I think is targeted for, I think it's a Monday, April 25th. Right, it will be off-site. If you can't make it, I understand, but if you can put that on your calendars, is that a Monday, 25th? Yeah. Okay, that's the target date for the certificate etiquette dinner. I don't know. I'm probably a 6 o'clock type thing. It will be off campus more than likely. It's less expensive and a little easier for us to do it that way. So please put that on your calendars. As soon as I confirm that and I know where and times, I will shoot that out to you guys. We did get dinner paid for. I don't know that we got the Republic paid for. Okay.
What's the uniform?
I'll give you all the information as soon as I have it. I just want to get the date on your calendar. I know it's busy and we're coming to an end. Okay, but please hang in there with your academics. Don't quit yet, especially if you're graduating. Right? Hang in, get your stuff done. If you have anything missing from me in my class, if you got a 0 or anything, please turn it in. I will always take late work for partial credit, which is always better than no credit. Okay, so please get your stuff in. Right? If you have absences, please make those up too. Yes, sir.
Does this class end early?
We end, I think because we're Tuesday, that's the last academic day, which I think is May 3rd. I think we actually end on like the only normal day that week or whatever. I'm pretty sure from looking before.
What's our final?
If you guys show up on time to class, maybe I'll bring in some barbecue. You want, no? You don't want it? You don't want barbecue tacos in the morning? God, Bauer doesn't get any.
Hey, more for us.
That's right. Yeah, Han can have all yours. Okay. Please hang in there. All right. I remember senioritis distinctly. Okay. Please hang in there. I know that it's been hard in the core, right? The past couple of weeks. You're almost done. Right. So that's my pep talk. So please, yes, sir.
How do you combat senioritis?
You got to find that motivation. You're entitled to have it, but the degree, the job, whatever, you're completely entitled to have senioritis. But you're moving on to the next stage. So just finish the race. Okay? Finish the race so that you can start something new. Yes, ma'am.
When do we need to turn in all the paperwork?
Please. Go ahead and set. When you leave, you can set a pile of them up here. Please get that done by next class. Is that doable for everybody?
Yes.
That's a couple weeks. So please finish your interviews and everything by next class.
If we don't have our interview with us today, do you want us to wait to turn this in, or?
No, you can just do 2 piles, and you can bring the other one next week. Okay, and please print them out, all right? Because otherwise I do, and I don't have access to any printers here. It's a pain in the butt. All right, so yeah, if you just set a couple piles here, that would be great. And as soon as I get more information, I'll send that out, and I will post this week's assignment. Okay? Awesome. Go be awesome. Have a wonderful week.